talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes.
To our favorite shows.
Oh my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson at Blurnsville.
Futurama.
Good evening and welcome to the Radulich Broadcasting Network Premier Television Review Podcast, TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show for the first time, for the last time, is Hannibal, Season 3. Brought to you formerly by the good people at NBC, and now you can watch it on Amazon Prime, should you subscribe to such things. Joining me on this journey, concluding this journey as it were, since it ended after Season 3, is the host of the 401 Ground and Pound radio show on 401mania.com, and our very own host of Damn You Hollywood, Mr. Robert Winfree. How do you do?
Sad. I missed this show.
We were talking about that while I was watching it, and I said, you know, it is a wonderfully artistic and well-produced, well-acted show that had no right ever being on network television.
No, it's a minor... I mean, look, again, I say I missed the show, and I do. It is a minor miracle it lasted 3 seasons on NBC. At all.
I think the first season, where you have Will kind of descending into madness and being provoked / manipulated by Hannibal, but there still being kind of a monster of the week aesthetic to it, worked in its favor. And then everyone wanted to see how he was going to get out of it in Season 2. Then when you get to Season 3, it's like, well, okay, this is the Red Dragon movie done as a television series, which was started out as a book, I understand that. So let's see how long it's going to take him to catch Hannibal. And when it takes a few episodes, and there's a lot going on in those first couple episodes, and before we finally get to Dollarhide, I think I could see where people were like, I was really into this idea. Then I was curious to see where it was going to go. You fucking lost me. And I'm not saying that that's me per se. I was in it to the end, but I can see where a lot of people, once they stopped doing the Monster of the Week thing, and there was so much of it that was in the minutia of character building, that it lost the people that were there for the Monster of the Week milieu.
I agree. Again, this is a really niche kind of show in that respect. It's deeply artistic, and it gets a bit more on the psychedelic side as time goes on. I think in Season 3 in particular, that's done to deliberately play around with some of the stuff they're trying to represent on screen.
Yeah.
Because there's only so much of a sex scene you can show on NBC. So, in an effort to kind of visually convey to the audience the more than just the kind of base act, there's artistic choices made to kind of get represent it to the audience beyond, again, what you can show on free broadcast television. And we're also still dealing with a show that is fundamentally about a human being eating other human beings.
Even though they look delectable when he does. I mean,
again, like the presentation, like the food porn aspect of this show is tremendous, but you're still eating people, and there's still that is still like the final real taboo our society kind of has at the moment, especially if the love is love people have their way and we normalize pedophilia.
Yuck. The show started off with 2.57 million viewers. It drops to 166, then 169, then 14, then 12. Bumps up a little bit once we get to Dulce, and then drops off a fucking cliff the next episode to less than 1. I mean, we're talking, I think we're getting into late Nitro ratings here. 0.9, 0.9, a little bump in 1.2, and we drop fractionally again. We're kind of hovering in the 1 area, and then by the time we get to the last 2 episodes, were down to 0.79 and 0.12 respectively. Yeah, people fucking gave up after a while with this one. Let me kind of needle you on that a little bit further. This is your chance to tell people they're all dumb.
They are. Look, people know they're dumb. There's not really a discussion around that.
But, when I was going through my sort of introduction to this, like I said, it goes Monster Week / Will descending into madness. Then it's how does Will get out of the state hospital, and and how are they gonna prove Lecter is Hannibal the cannibal? Now the chase is on. Now they have to go after Hannibal after he left Will bleeding on the floor, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he left Will bleeding on the floor, Abigail dead, Jack Crawford bleeding out of the neck, and Alana Bloom with a badly broken hip outside of his house.
Yeah, he threw her out a window, if I recall.
Abigail shoved her out the window, but yeah.
So everybody's in tatters, and Hannibal has fled to Europe with Dr. Morier. You would think that, and obviously there was some degree of interest in this. I mean, we started almost, 2.5 million people watching this. Why do you think by the time we get to episode 7, pretty much the audience just diminishes to nothing?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. One, again, let's be honest about the material being adapted once we get into the first half of season 3, basically, is from the novel Hannibal. And you, me, Sean, and Benjamin all sat around and debated the merits of that movie when done by Ridley Scott. And we also talked a little bit about the inherent kind of shortcomings of the source material being adapted in that respect. And how it does make things a bit more difficult. So the choice to kind of go with that as your intro to season 3, I understand that narratively that's what comes next. He's escaped. He's left Mason Verger where we meet him in the novel. This is what we need to get to this part next. That is the most logical thing. Unfortunately, that comes with a bunch of inherent both baggage and risk. And considering that the novel itself, I think Benjamin best described it as a freak show. And I don't mean that as a negative. I mean it's an accurate descriptor of the book. It is a display of depravity, whereas the others are. Whereas prior to that, especially in the novels, you always got the sense that this is the real world, and this is just an aspect of the craziness that goes along with it. And you get the same thing, I think, in the television show. In season 1 and even in season 2, you don't get the sense that this kind of, again, insanity and whatever else you want to attach to it is the totality of the world. It is an aspect of it. I mean, season 1 is basically, in a lot of respects, kind of like a CSI, a better version of CSI with actual characters and an overarching theme.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
And I want to I want you to finish your thoughts here, but I want to add this part to the discussion. Do you think they would have been better served had the threat of Hannibal been hinted at, it been out there, but had they extended the premise of the early premise of the first season, take out the part where Will descends into madness and just kind of kept it as serial killers, CSI, with Hannibal occasionally eating somebody? You think they might have made this last longer? Because I get the sneaking suspicion that's what people wanted.
Well, of course, look. If you're trying to appeal to the widest possible audience,
mm-hmm.
There's a reason crap like The Big Bang Theory or CSI is still on the air. Well, Big Bang Theory isn't, but CSI or any of its infinite derivations.
Well, how about this? The Simpsons is on 32nd season.
Something like that, yeah.
And not every episode's a banger. I know it's one of your great loves, but let's be honest here.
Oh no,
The Simpsons is extremely hit and miss.
My love of The Simpsons does in fact die at a very specific point in time. there's a very specific season after which I kind of go, all right, you know what? I'm out.
But I bring that up because if you're crafting a show, and look, and I said this on source material when we recorded it last night, and you'll get to hear it, assuming he keeps it in there, this coming Monday, when for Volume 2 of Onslaught. I said, the real trick is being able to marry pure art with being able to sell product. Being the art itself.
That is the eternal struggle of the artist.
Yes, and of the distributor. In this case,
yeah.
and in this case, the network and the studio. So like you've got this show Hannibal, and you want to keep it on the air. Look, they were intending to go. I think they said that if they hadn't been canceled, the next step was Silence of the Lambs. And I thought, that's one way to do this. I think the aesthetic of the show drove a lot of the ham and eggers away from the show. But even if you wanted to retain still a good, strong audience, because you can't get away from the fact that even the audience that was still interested by the time season 3 rolls around disappears.
It does drop. It drops off significantly, and again, I think there's some of the accessibility that goes away.
Right.
There's a couple of other things that I think kind of play into this, and some of this has to deal with subtlety, which is a big theme of this show in general. And let's be frank, I have no problem insulting the general populace of humanity, a thing that goes over the heads of most people.
Sure.
I imagine there was a significant, and I did not plug into the community as such. I imagine there was a bit of a significant backlash when Hannibal surrenders himself to Crawford.
Right.
Because
he does so with malevolent intent, which is consistent with the character. But I can imagine a lot of people didn't pick that up.
Yes, which I think is kind of my thing about it. Again, I agree that it's consistent within this version of the character. It's even properly set up when Will says his goodbye and final rejection of essentially the dark nature of himself, which is kind of what Hannibal represents in that respect. When he actually does say, goodbye, we're done.
Right. I don't want to know where you are.
That's actually what wounds Hannibal.
And almost as quickly as that dribbles out of his mouth, Hannibal is caught, and now Will always know exactly where he is.
Yes. Again, it is wonderfully set up, but it is, again, if you're not really kind of paying attention, it seems out of left field. And given how many people don't pay attention to things, okay, fair enough, I can get that. So there's that. There's the kind of unfortunate reality of Red Dragon having been done well already, and it coming a bit out of, I hate to say out of left field again, but we wrap up the conclusion of Hannibal and Will with Hannibal surrendering and just kind of, it's a little bit like, I don't know if you've seen the movie in question, but there's a movie called The Prophecy. It stars Christopher Walken, Elias Coates, and has Viggo Mortensen as the literal devil. And the last thing he says on screen is he turns to Elias Coates, who's the hero, and says, in reference to some of their earlier exchanges, keep the nightlight on, buddy. It's just every great exit on screen of the devil character has that last little needle, has that little bit of, you're never really going to get away from me. And that's kind of what that is from Hannibal to Will. Just, you can reject me you can reject me if you want. We both know that's kind of a finite thing. And if there's one thing I wish that they had kind of, because our intro to Dollarhide is all the pre-credit sequence of the next episode. I wish they had strung that into the previous few episodes, just little bits, either before the credits or right before the end credits. Just let us know this guy is in the background out there preparing. Because otherwise this feels more so than some of the other seasons, which have had distinct themes, mind you. Again, season 1, while it is Monster of the Week, has kind of there's a defining kind of point there, that is pre-Will's encephalitis being out and post. Season 2 is pre-Will getting out of the asylum and then transitions into how are we going to catch Hannibal. But those kind of flow a little bit better. This goes from conclusion of Hannibal, source material, Red Dragon, without a lot of connective tissue. And I think that's a bit of an issue as well.
If I can draw kind of a weird parallel, it's kind of like the beginning of Endgame, where they kill Thanos. Spoilers. They kill Thanos in the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then people are like, "Hmm?" There were audience members going, "Is it over?" And then you have.
I would have stood up and cheered if that was it. Not a joke. I would have been the only guy in my theater. I would have given a standing ovation to that bit of marketing genius.
Throwing flowers at the screen.
Hey, this is going to be a near 3-hour movie. Actually ends in 5 minutes. With our heroes hopeless. Yes.
I don't think a billion-dollar company can control its audience. I'm just going to throw that out there. As fun, I agree. It would have been great.
Hang on. You are incorrect in your assessment of how Disney control its audience, for the record. We'll see more of that later.
I said troll, not control.
I agree. I said troll.
Okay, just checking, make sure we're on the same page. But I think there's that. I think that to go from, because even I kind of felt that as an audience member, like I knew what they were doing, but it's just like, okay, well that got wrapped up. And it feels like a mid-season finale, but I was actually going through the air dates as you were talking, and which I'm going to round back to this because I want to ask you a question about it. But no, this ran pretty consistently from June 4th weekly until it concluded on August 29th in the U.S.
Mid-season finales tend to be for shows that go 26 episodes, give or take. This one's only 13. If you only have a 13-episode season, you only run for one. You don't get the traditional mid-season break.
Right.
You get one season.
But that's what I'm saying. It thematically, it felt like they should have taken a break. But obviously they don't have enough episodes to do that, so they just run right through. But I think as an audience member, here's the thing. As an audience member, you are invested in the fate of Hannibal and Will. When they conclude that, and then basically now you're going into bits of Red Dragon, to where only unless you're invested in the lore of Hannibal and the books and the movies, I think there your audience is like, the story's been told. And that's why I led this discussion with, they might have been better off saving this down the line. The show might have gone on longer, which does bleed into my question about did the network just want to see this thing go away? Like, I don't know when exactly they learned they were canceled, but I noticed that from the first and second season to the third, they got moved from a spring debut and ending at the summer, which traditionally is when the TV season ends, to this is a summer, which is fucking death for television. The summer is where you get things like like MasterChef and like competition shows, stuff that doesn't involve a tremendous amount of writing, but also, just really light fare because people aren't home through, in the summer. They're off, they're doing things, they're on vacations. There's not a lot of television viewing going on in the summer. And this thing had a June 4th air date. So I'm wondering if NBC kind of going into season 15, like, let them finish the story and then kill this thing because we want it off the air.
I think there was a bit of that. I mean, and let me be clear, I don't think the network, they didn't have to give this show 3 seasons, right? They could have ended this after 1 if the ratings weren't there, if they weren't behind it artistically, whatever. So I'm not throwing NBC necessarily under the proverbial bus here about canceling one of my favorite shows. I understand. I do. Mm-hmm. I'm still a little pissed about it, but I do understand. That said, I think you keep shows on the air for, if you're not drawing gigantic numbers. The other thing that you kind of need to have going in your favor is prestige. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, due to, I'm of the opinion, just due to pure subject material, this show went largely unrecognized during award seasons. There were no set design. I mean, again, no costuming, no production, no acting, none of it. No major awards. Which is, first of all,
so we're limiting this to Emmys then.
Not even Emmys.
No, I'm saying, because I'm checking to see if you're, I'm fact checking you to see if you're right.
Well, okay. Emmys and Golden Globes, the two big ones.
Okay, so hang on, because I got it right here.
It got a bunch of Saturn Award nominations, and
yes.
the niche stuff ate this up because it's a niche show. Unfortunately, the mainstream was not really willing to kind of kick in, especially, and again, it's a crying shame that Mickelson and Dancy, all the acting in this show is great.
So just so we're all on the right page here. So no Golden Globes and Emmys. It was nominated for one Emmy. It did not win.
Out of season 1, I believe, right?
Nope. Primavera. Outstanding special visual effects.
Oh, that was season 3, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nominated in the 2016 award season.
Okay, so you get one in its last season. That it, didn't win, but probably should have. Again, if you don't have a lot of ratings and you don't have the prestige factor, you're kind of dead on television.
Right.
Especially big network television. Again, if you're on, AMC or one of the smaller networks, and AMC is not exactly small necessarily, but if you're on a smaller network, you can get by on just the niche audience. On NBC, you can't really do that.
Just as a point of fact, it was. I'm not reading all of these because I'm like the IGN stuff. Who gives a shit? It was nominated for a bunch of Saturn Awards. It was nominated for an Online Film and Television Association Award, or whatever that's worth.
Again,
it was nominated for a bunch of Fangoria Awards.
Again, let's be clear. This is not a show that went totally unrecognized. It went unrecognized by the groups that have cachet enough to help keep a show around.
Here's the one I actually wanted to read, though. In 2016, it was nominated for a Critics' Choice Television Award. They were nominees for Best Drama Actor in Hugh Dancy, and nominees for Best Guest Performer in a Drama Series for Richard Armitage, and then that's it. The rest of it's just Saturn and less than Saturn Awards.
Yeah, which is
so no, it did not have
a
the
deep
prestige.
shame.
Yes,
again, a deep shame because there's some absolutely tremendous acting in this show
mm-hmm.
that just went unremarked by the general awards community.
So here's something to be interested in, though. Apparently, the first season, the cumulative Rotten Tomato score was 81%. Second and third season both get 98s. Metacritic goes 70, 88, 84.
Yeah, that's probably about fair.
The other thing you should be aware of, and it goes to, I think out of respect for everybody involved, the network just somewhere along the line decided, let them finish, but we're done with this. So the first 6 episodes of season 3 are on Thursday nights, which is prime time. So you've got NBC, right? Their strong lineups are usually Thursday nights. I think for the longest time that it had a tagline or whatever. I don't know if Friends was still on at this point, but so you have your prime time Thursday night lineup that bleeds right into this show, and it still couldn't maintain an audience. And then for the last 7 to 13 episodes, it was moved to Saturday night, which, as I would like to remind everyone, is fucking death on television.
Yeah. Again, I'm grateful they gave them the chance to kind of wrap it up, but yeah, they were pretty clear. There's pretty clearly a point when the network is going to cut bait.
Yeah. So this all started with me asking, had they kept with the season 1 premise and not made Will go crazy? Do you think they might have bought themselves a few more seasons?
Yes, but I also think that if they go that route, they diminish what the show is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, don't get me wrong, it sucks. Because, again, I love this show, and I was sorry to see it go. And every couple of years or so, somebody, usually Brian Fuller, will kind of mention that, there's interest in getting a revival. All the principal players are down to come back for the role, and I just want to punch him in the face for toying with my emotions.
So, do you know who owns the IP on? I mean, this was, as we've learned, just because it's produced on a network doesn't mean the corporation itself owns the IP. So it's. I don't know if it's Universal or not.
I'm pretty sure it is. Universal's the one who's done the Hannibal and Red Dragon movies.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think they were done MGM, and now Universal owns MGM.
I'm wondering if their IP works like Marvel, where if they don't produce something with Hannibal Lecter, they lose. It goes back to whoever owns it originally, or if they just own it outright.
I don't know for sure. That's deep in the minutia of how this goes.
Sure.
That said, again, as soon as it was canceled, a bunch of us, myself, Benjamin, a lot of people in the fandom just went, "Oh, Netflix."
Right.
And there's a bunch of stuff that you can do. Again, there's stuff you can do on Netflix you can't do on network television. And Brian Fuller was actually saying the things that made me think that would be a good move. He just said, we don't have to change a whole lot if we have different broadcast restrictions. Which means, hey, we're not going to go full on, kind of over-the-top decadence of, profanity and violence as a big screw you to network television. It's just, there's a few other things we can do, but NBC still had, I believe, a stake in Hulu or something similar. Mm-hmm. So it couldn't go to Netflix. It couldn't go to any other even traditional broadcast television stations. It couldn't really go on or Amazon Prime or so any of these places that it could fit and could find an audience as such. They just weren't in a position to either come to terms financially or contractually. And
Watch it end up on Shudder.
They don't have the budget for it. They don't have they couldn't budget the suits in Hannibal Lecter's collection.
But they don't have to front production. If Universal decides they want to front production on this, or NBC Studios, but then they want to collect a broadcasting fee from a streaming service. That's entirely possible. I just want to read this from the Wikipedia page. In January of 2019, Mickelson exclusively revealed to Bloody Disgusting that he suspected Fuller to be securing the rights to Silence of the Lambs, saying in full, "Yeah, I think there's always new hope. I haven't heard anything specific. I know Brian is still working on some ideas where we can find a new home for this. I also have a strong feeling that everybody who was involved in it would gladly pick up the glove again if that happens. I don't know where they looked. That is above my paycheck, but I know they've been talking to different studios. I know that Fuller was working on getting the rights to Silence of the Lambs so that he could get in there and use some of those characters for his own universe. I have a hunch that might be where we're going." And we'll wrap up this part of the discussion with this, and then look at the actual craft of season 3. I have there is now, and it's so funny because the Red Letter Media guys actually just did a whole, did one of their Nerd Crew podcasts, which is where they mockingly editorialize the state of film and television. They started with more or less just going after Star Wars, and they've expanded outwards. But they did a whole thing on people buying 106 different streaming services and the creation therein of 1,006 different streaming services for every niche audience out there, for anywhere between $3 and $4 to $10 to $50. Fucking DAZN is, I think, like $20 a month or something like that. But anyway, there's a need for content out there. There is a need for new content. Right now, it's kind of a buyer's market for content. Now, how much of that content is going to be viewed by people, and how much, and will it generate revenue? I don't know. That's again getting a little into the weeds here, and I don't have an accountant nearby to kind of go over the numbers for me. But that is certainly, this is kind of a bubble that's forming, a streaming bubble, if you will, where you have all of these different streaming services where the way to get people to come to your streaming service is by offering them an exclusive show. So, for example, it's not a great example, but like Disney Plus, people are going to buy that just because it's Disney. But let's assume it didn't have the name brand recognition that it does. You're getting exclusive Marvel and Lucasfilm shows on there, and so people were like, well, if I want to watch the show, I gotta get the streaming service. That's why I threw Shudder out there, because Shudder might be willing to pay some ridiculous fee for the broadcast rights for a streaming only Hannibal continuation. Weirder shows have showed up in situations like that, like Lucifer, for example. I have the foggiest clue why this continued on Netflix, but it did. So there's always that possibility. You got anything else, or you want to move on?
Again, if we're just talking about kind of the nuts and bolts, a little bit of the broadcasting and mechanics and whatnot. No, I think as far as now, we can save this for craft, because there's a lot of these craft I want to talk about.
Well, so shoot, go. Don't wait for me to generate discussion. I don't really have an agenda here. Go.
One of the things that kind of made me sad about this season, and we get this. First of all, I know that again the pacing of this is very much not in the wheelhouse of what people normally expect from broadcast television.
You ain't kidding.
They like to be spoon-fed, and they like things to make, and they like direct continuation. So the fact that the first episode of this season does not even substantively mention Will Graham or Alana Bloom or Jack Crawford, and we don't know who lived and who died in the aftermath of the season 2 finale, was a bit of a bold choice.
That's not even my problem, because I can live with that. I can.
I'm talking about more generally.
No, and I know that, but I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees, and I get the trees want to be spoon-fed, but I was okay with putting this off a little bit, and building that interest. Certainly, if I'm a producer, I want to keep an audience. That's got to be weighing on me. So, let's maybe wait an episode or two before we reveal whether or not Will died. That's fine. I'm okay with that. My problem was the excruciatingly slow pace of this show. I mean, there's Dog Day Afternoon, then there's Nearly Dead. And, I mean, look, again, I'm speaking for a general audience here, myself included. There got to be points of this show where my mind was like, this is gorgeous. This is beautiful. This is an amazingly produced show. But my heart was like, blow something the fuck up already. Kill somebody.
Yeah, okay, you don't have to blow something up, but there are points when, and again, I really love the subtlety of this show, but there are points when it gets a little bit self-involved.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, just kind of, partially I think that is the nature of the material they're adapting for the first half of this season. Partially I think it's Brian Fuller.
It is it is a crime, and I don't want to double back on this. I want you to continue, but this needs to be said, because the art direction on this show is the best I've ever seen. It's amazing, especially for network television, and the fact that it has been unrecognized as such by any of the major awards committees is a crime against. It's a crime against Hollywood. But I'll let you continue.
I completely agree with you on that. So there's one of the things that kind of made me sad, and we get this after a little bit, but the recasting of Mason Verger. This is the first, I think, major recast that this show does. And it's a shame just because Michael Pitt does such a great job in Season 2. And I think had the real possibility of being more creepy as disfigured, disabled Mason Verger than Gary Oldman was. And that's a hell of a thing. Because out-creeping Gary Oldman from Hannibal is not something I thought was all that feasible. And I think Michael Pitt could have pulled it off. And I don't know why they recast him, but they did, and it was a choice. And the guy they get to replace him, forgive me, I forget his name off the top of my head. It's not that he does a bad job. He doesn't. But through the first couple of episodes, I kind of get the one thing that this show could not really afford to do. And that's have a performance that feels like it's, I don't want to say aping, but more deeply inspired by the performance that came before it.
So the guy's name is Joe Anderson, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Because, again, he does a good job. And after the first couple of episodes with him, he does kind of get his feet under him with the character, and it stops feeling like he's doing Gary Oldman. But those first couple of times we see him, that's the feeling I get. And that's a hard kind of feeling to shake as such, you know? Like, once that impression's been left, you have to work hard to overcome it. And, again, to his eternal credit, he does. But it also never quite gets to the same point that I felt I had with, Pitt, where this is a distinct take on the character. And, again, it's unfortunate, but it is the reality of the situation as I see it. The acting in the show is universally excellent. I don't know why they felt the need to draw out the Hannibal source material as much as they did for the first half of this season, because they added bits of stuff from Hannibal Rising, at least in passing, where he goes to Hannibal's ancestral home in Lithuania, meets a wholly unique character. This is not a character from the novel. The closest thing you have to her in that is Hannibal's his step-aunt, Lady Murasaki, who's a deeply important character in his development as far as the novelization and that version of events go. And she's, I don't know. I almost feel like she exists because Brian Fuller liked the aesthetic of an attractive Japanese woman with a sniper rifle.
Yeah, I can't really argue with you there.
And don't get me wrong, she's an attractive woman and she does wield a sniper rifle. But after she kind of talks a little bit with Will about, after he gets a little bit of, the backstory of who Hannibal was and kind of some of the formative events that made him, she doesn't serve a whole lot of purpose other than to provide Deus Ex Machina for getting them out of a few situations.
Yeah.
That being said, Hannibal's ending with her, in fact, is especially poignant when he mentions that, the most stable elements on the periodic table fall between iron and silver, and I think that's about where you fall. That's a relatively beautiful thing. But she doesn't add a tremendous amount of value to the show, apart from narrative function, which, again, a bit unfortunate, but I'm going to call a spade even in a show I like.
Let me interrupt you here. Yes, I mean there's no disagreement in anyone's performance, including the actress who I'm going to critique a little bit. Gillian Anderson, bit breathy for me. This is a personal thing. I'm not saying she's not believable. There were no hallmarks of her performance to where I would say she's doing things badly. She's believable. She doesn't seem like she's forgetting her lines or anything like that. This is all well and good, but I just feel like of everyone's performance in this, it seems like they are giving a performance where the character is deeply struggling, at the exception of Hannibal, whereas they're deeply struggling with their own psychosis and, in the world around them and the events that have affected them. She goes a bit overboard for my taste. Again, I use the word breathy, and, and it almost feels like every time she's about to deliver a line, she's been kicked in the diaphragm.
I don't think you're wrong. I feel her character also overstays its welcome.
Yeah.
That said, I think there was an idea for her character should they get, again, that fourth season somewhere, they have now a setup where, I mean, at the end of the series, she is literally, there's a table set for 3 with her leg as the centerpiece for dinner. So I think if they'd had a 4th season, they pick up at that dinner party, and she does not continue to exist beyond that point.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think in order to preserve getting to that point as a bit of a hook for another potential season, the character does overstay its welcome, in my estimation. I want to give a couple of special kudos here as far as acting goes. Again, Mickelson and Dancy, listen to our previous shows. I can't say any more than I've already said about them. They're tremendous. Rewatching this season gave me a slightly different perspective on something because, again, all the acting is excellent. It's a shame that Lawrence Fishburne's got overshadowed to the degree that it did. And I understand why. Because when I say there's not a lot of oxygen in the room, that's not a knock on any of the performers who are taking it up. They're not trying to deprive any of the other performances of the ability to succeed. That's not a thing. They're just so good that there's elements of this that require second and third viewings, I think, to really gain a full appreciation for everyone involved. And Lawrence Fishburne's take on Jack Crawford is one of those that just the second or third time you go through it, you really this might be some of the best acting of Fishburne's entire career. And he's done so. I mean, this guy played Othello. You know, this is not a man unfamiliar with the actual craft of acting, and this might be some of his best work, if not the best. So I do want to give him kudos. Richard Armitage as Francis Dollarhide. This was a bit of an odd one for me initially because, unfortunately, and this is not a knock on him, with this character, you're gonna wind up retreading what was done with Ray Fiennes pretty much 1-to-1. Like this is not a deep character in the sense that there's a lot of material to draw from. There's about half of one novel. So and the events are clearly not really in contest. He's going to do what he did. So there's a lot of retreaded ground, but he does a good job. He does a very good job physically. And that's a big deal for me with this character. I mean, he throws himself around in certain scenes in this movie like a rag doll. And, you know, a lot of credit to him for doing such. That is not the most pleasant of experiences. But he's throwing himself around. He doesn't have the same kind of raw physicality that Fiennes developed for the role, but he does have very clearly a lot of strength that he has put into himself. And it's a different kind of physicality that he brings, but it is still a very important one. And so I think he deserves a lot of credit. And his speech for this, because this is one area he, I believe, definitively surpasses Fiennes. He actually speaks like someone who has had that kind of cleft palate reconstruction. And it becomes clear after a while that he can kind of turn that off and on when his psychosis allows him to. But when it's on, it's very much on for him. Whereas I think that's something that, again, Fiennes didn't quite nail to this degree. So I've talked for a while now. What about you? Again, as you look back on this season, what from the craft, apart from the art direction, what bits of writing, what bits of acting really stand out for you?
It's kind of up and down for me, and I almost hesitate to kind of tell you some of the issues that I had because this falls into, oh, you just want to see boobs and explosions.
No, look, please, I understand your personal taste, and if you're, and again, I get that. So by all means, go ahead. There are plenty of, I will say, there are plenty of boobs in this movie or in the show. Like, let's not pretend there aren't boobs.
So, first of all, I loved Verger. I didn't remember who played him in the second season. I barely remembered that plot line. And when they referenced it, I was like, oh, that's right. He's the pig guy. And I kind of had to go back and read some of the stuff. Like, I'm well caught up now. But he was my favorite part of the first half of the season. I was sad to see him go. Because the guy playing him... First of all, so the scenes with Verger, because he's such a shitty person. And the guy playing him is so over the top. Like, he is what's left of his face chewing every bit of scenery around him. And I dig that sort of thing. I like a bigger-than-life villain.
Oh, yeah, he absolutely is that.
As opposed to Hannibal and Dr. Morier, who are getting into these seemingly endless moral debates. You know, and there's a lot of, I'm going to kill you. I know you're going to kill me. But do you know you're going to kill me? I know that I'm going to kill you. Oh, ugh! Move on! You know? That got frustrating. I enjoyed the stuff with Will to a degree, kind of guilt-ridden, hallucinating the presence of Abigail Hobbs.
Let me be clear, if I wasn't entirely certain when I watched that episode where she shows up that he's hallucinating, I would have thrown something. Because... for a very specific reason. This show goes out of its way to, when someone survives something, and this plays into very specifically, this is a reference I'm not sure too many people will get, but Brian Fuller's decision to turn Frederick Chilton into their version of Herr Starr, Preacher reference. The stuff that he survives, when they show him survive here, how he survived being shot in the face, that's a real thing. People survive that in precisely that way. The bullet just doesn't actually penetrate the skull. When he survives being immolated, believe it or not, also a thing people survive. I mean, he survived, having his organs rearranged very surgically by a professional surgeon. So they do kind of go out of their way to, even when you survive these horribly improbable things, there is precedent for it in reality. When Abigail survives the initial throat cutting, you can see her scar. It's relatively short, and don't get me wrong, major blood vessels are there, but it's also shallow, and you can see that actually in this first season when they are it's not a deep cut. By contrast, Hannibal damn near goes ear to ear. Like, he gives her a second smile. No, you're dead.
But again, I just watched the show unfold before me, and I liked, to a degree, Will still struggling with, this is now the third season of this, still struggling with this character and his involvement in her inevitable demise. But there was a small part, so it's like 95% dug the acting, dug the subtext, dug the visual presentation. 5% of me like, again with this? Like, like there's some of this. One of the faults I have with this show is it does a bit of retread of things either the show already did or that we got from the movies, and there isn't enough differentiation in this in the stuff from the movies for me to go, oh, I'm still interested in this. And I'm very much speaking of the specific Red Dragon stuff. Now, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I think once they caught Hannibal, I kind of checked out of the show. And the little bit that I did like was Will coming to him, and I forgot about this now that I'm thinking about it. I wanted to introduce you as he's a shy boy, because his fucking Hannibal says it so many times, and it's a great line. And I was wondering, is that really your impression of this guy, or are you just saying that because it's movement of chess pieces on a board for something bigger that you want, and so that's just what you feel like you have to say?
Both. In fairness, I think both. Again, because the Red Dollarhide is in fact a shy person, both in his real life and in fact in his murderous pursuits.
Right. But he goes out of his way to say it, and he says it almost gleefully. This is a shy boy, and so I enjoyed that. And again, the highlight of the show is Will and Hannibal interacting with one another as they pursue other serial killers. Dealing with just Dollahide by himself and him, hulking up in an attic, going, I am the great big dragon, or the great red dragon. I've seen it. You're not doing a bad performance. It's a performance I already saw and was great. You said it before. I mean, Ralph Fiennes does an excellent job as Dollahide, and it's like, well, you're not. I don't know what you're going to do to be better than that, or be so much different than that to keep me interested as a viewer. So that part of the season kind of loses me, and then finally, and then maybe we can start to move towards wrapping this up, unless you have a tremendous amount more we want to dig into. The ending. I feel like that was them diving off a cliff like Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole.
Oh, for the love of you, sir, are a godless heathen.
I mean,
I get so sick of having to. I get the so sick of having to explain that. It's not just subtext. That's a deliberate reference that, for some reason, our society of ignoramus do not understand.
Okay, go ahead and educate me, sir. But let me get this out, and then I will sit back and be educated freely. I watched that, and I'm like, how fucking Hollywood? Like, really? We're going with the ambiguous ending? Did they die? Didn't they? We don't know. And I get that. The idea of Will feeling like there's only one way this can end, and that's if he kills Hannibal. So he throws himself off the cliff with them embraced. That Hannibal will never willingly let himself, and may never be able to be properly beaten. Even when he gives himself up, he isn't beaten. It's just another move. So, I get all that. But it's still stuck in my craw. That produced a giant eye roll moment for me. Now, tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay, first of all, you're not wrong if you eye rolled at it. I understand. You're utterly desensitized to, and this is not just you personally, mind you. This is like everyone. There's a giant amount of desensitization to moments like this due to their overuse, for the sake of either both shock value or just stupid ambiguity. So that when they're actually set up properly and utilized properly, they don't actually have the same impact due to overuse. This is a very deliberate reference to, and this predates Hollywood, Sherlock Holmes. But because the number of people nowadays who have actually read The Final Solution... Sorry, it's not The Final Solution.
That's something else, sir.
Yeah, that's it. No, there's actually there's a. How dare you? First of all, there is a Sherlock Holmes short story called The Final Solution, which actually deals with, I believe, his drug addiction. I can't remember if Conan Doyle wrote that or if that's one of the kind of like, for want of a better phrase, expanded universe things. But in the original Sherlock Holmes set of stories, this is the only way that Sherlock Holmes can figure to deal with Moriarty. This is the greatest foe he'll ever face. This is a man who can't be caught as such. When he is able to best him, it doesn't even, like you said, it's just another move. There's no real beating him in the traditional sense of the word, and the only way he's able to actually end this is through self-sacrifice, which is a concept utterly foreign to Moriarty. And this is played out in the Game of Shadows movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Jared Harris. Jared Harris did such a phenomenal job in that movie. I mean, there's actually a line in that particular movie that foreshadows the ending when Sherlock Holmes tells him that something to the effect – there's a whole exchange, but he tells him something to the effect of, you've paid me several compliments, allow me to pay you one. I hold you in such high esteem that I would happily accept accept self-destruction in order to stop you. And that's kind of where what that comes down to. They're able to play out in their own minds a dozen different variations of how their physical altercation goes, and it always ends with Moriarty successful. The only way for Sherlock Holmes to beat him is to do something that he can't even conceive of. In this instance, be willing to sacrifice my own life for the good of others, because this is anathema to who you are. That's kind of what we get here. You actually hear Hannibal say at one point to someone else, suicide is the enemy. This is the only real thing that Hannibal truly abhors is the act of self-destruction, in no small part due to his narcissism. So for Will to be willing to do that, especially in this one moment when he kind of views as his singular triumph, I finally got you. We finally engage. This is what he actually does say. This is all I ever wanted for us, is moments like this. And in fairness, that bit where those two fight with Dollarhide, you do get glimpses of how profoundly destructive they could be if they actually worked in tandem. No duplicity, no double talk, no reservations. If they're whole hog, all in on the same page, what beautiful destruction they could wreak.
I think this also, and this is a very personal thing, and I'm sure you're going to have to bite down on your hand when I say it, so get ready. That scene, that conclusion, might have had a bigger impact on me had I not just seen a big action facsimile of the same exact thing in Hobbs and Shaw.
I'm not entirely sure Hobbs and Shaw has even remotely the same thing.
The 2-on-1 fight.
Oh. If you're limiting the discussion to that singular bit of reality, okay, fine. There's parallels.
Yes. But that's the part that I'm having. That's the problem with having watched the show in 2019 that was on in 2015, is a lot's happened between the last 4 years. So there are certain things where I'm like, meh. I want this to be groundbreaking, and I think for a show like this, the production team has to go all in and not worry about the audience, or don't, and make it a mass appeal show. But then you've lost the heart of the show.
Yeah,
I think either will work.
Trying to walk that tightrope is.
I think either way you go, you will have some kind of success. You're either going to have a show that fans will kill themselves to keep on a streaming service, and I want to be very clear about that. This is going to be the kind of thing where people will make sure it stays on Netflix forever. But you will have a very small Netflix audience, or you make it mass appeal and you lose everybody with half a brain that likes the thing, but you'll keep the people who watch like Law and Order and CSI ad infinitum. Yeah,
it's a danger. Again, it's a tough thing to kind of walk. And in fairness, a lot of us would have, I quite happily would have gone through acts of violence to keep the show on Netflix, but the contract situations prevented it.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get back into that again. I was just a general thing.
Yeah, again, I've said goodbye to this show so many times that every now and then when something comes up like, hey, we're kind of working on something, it's not fair, man. I made my peace with this. It hurt, but I did it.
Is this your Gambit movie for you?
You don't care about Gambit half as much as I loved this show.
That's true. I don't. I still want to see this movie, much like the New Mutants. I want to see this movie come to pass just because.
No, you don't.
Quit dangling this hook out there for as long as you have.
Hold on. New Mutants at least has been shot.
Yes, and apparently it's testing well with audiences.
After being recut again.
Yeah.
For the fourth time. Again, Gambit is like a loose character that had one sort of appearance in a pretty crappy movie.
But yeah, having just seen the kind of 2-on-1 thing in Hobbs and Shaw, and then having seen the going over the falls with your enemy thing one too many times, I think here now, as I say things out loud and as we're processing them, I think my problem with the finale was I think the show's better than this, and I understand I utterly missed, because I didn't know it existed, the reference to Sherlock Holmes that they're paralleling. I get that now. It does make it somewhat stronger, but I can't help that as a viewer. I'm like, as I watch through breathy performances and long stretches of dialogue where they wrestle with the morality of a thing, and just going on and on and on, and having long, elaborate table sets of gorgeous-looking food made of people like oh so much Soylent Green, and then we get to the finale and it's a fist fight and going over the falls. See, that kind of shit makes me want to smash a chair.
I can see that.
Better than this, Hannibal. You're better than this.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think it is kind of a shame that we never got, and bear in mind the following is just rumor, because the Silence of the Lambs IP was owned by is owned by a different group. That's why they couldn't use characters from it. The story that I heard was if they survived going over the cliff, which I imagine they did, Will would have gone into permanent retirement. We would have moved in towards more Silence of the Lambs territory.
Sure.
And that includes essentially a retelling of the bit in Hannibal where Clarice goes full what Hannibal wants from Will. And then the final season is actually they do get Will out of retirement in order to catch them because he's the only one that can.
Mm.
And I do think it's a shame we're not going to get a version of that story, because I think there's a very good chance that that could be done quite well, especially given the history of this show. I also, just because I don't, and I said this about every other performance in Silence of the Lambs, and they were able to do it, I don't know who you could possibly get to do Clarice. But I said that about Hannibal, I said that about, plenty of other characters, and the people involved in this show worked minor miracles and got it. I don't watch Mads Mikkelsen and see anything approximating Anthony Hopkins' version of Hannibal Lecter. I don't watch Hugh Dancy and see Edward Norton at all. So I think they could have done it, and I would have been very interested to see A, who it was, and B, what their take on the character was.
I got your actress right here.
All right.
I love how you know immediately
I know
this is
what
going to go
you're
badly.
gonna do.
Debbie Ryan from Hey Jesse.
I want to punch you so much.
I think she could pull it off. Okay,
You are lying through your teeth.
You know what's funny about that? I'm sitting here going, what actress can I come up with that will make Robert want to bang his head into the... Like, Miley Cyrus? No, that's too obvious. It's like, as you're talking, I'm going through the Rolodex of young actors in my mind. I'm like, this one's perfect, because she actually has a Netflix show.
Look, I'm just kind of grateful you didn't say Zoe Deschanel.
No, she's too old to play Clarice.
That's Emily, not Zoe.
Oh, okay.
Zoe is the obnoxious chick from New Girl.
Yeah, she's too old.
She's not too old.
Zoe Deschanel?
How old is she?
Let's see. Zoe Deschanel. I feel like a Hollywood producer here. Poor Judy Garland, by the way. I don't know if you just checked out our chat today.
I don't know why you're just now coming to the realization about terrible things that happened to these people before you were born.
It's not like a realization. I just happened to have been listening to a podcast on it. I'm like, whoa, it's far worse than I thought.
Look, everyone involved in the Wizard of Oz, apart from like one, I think the person who played the Scarecrow was the only one who actually was alive long enough to see that performance attain a degree of notoriety and success.
Moving on. Zoe Deschanel is 39.
She also looks young enough. I mean, again, you can make her up to look young enough, but okay,
are you Robert Winfree now pitching Zooey Deschanel as Clarice in a Silence of the Lambs retelling?
No, I genuinely didn't realize she was that old. She looks very young.
Okay, I just wanted to know. I didn't know where you were headed with this, because now I feel like you're convincing yourself this would be a good idea.
No, it's a terrible idea. I'm all I'm doing is building contingencies around how it could happen.
Okay. Well, I'm still pulling for Debbie Ryan. I'm going on Twitter to talk about it right now.
So help me God. Do not do that. I mean, look, let's be fair. They'd also probably cast Melissa McCarthy because of reasons.
No, wrong actress. Tiffany Haddish. That's the one who gets that part.
Sure.
Hannibal.
He would just cut her throat the first time they met if she came out.
I'm gonna smack the shit at you, Hannibal.
Yeah, dead.
right through the plastic screen or glass screen, whatever he's got up there. Just bam. Yep. All right. Before we get ourselves into trouble here, last words and goodbyes to our good friends, the cast of Hannibal season 3.
God, I miss this show, man. In no small part because I haven't found something else like it. You know, there's other serial killer shows
what do you think
which I enjoy.
What about Mindhunter? I'm sure Mindhunter doesn't come aesthetically close to this. I know that's a very specific thing, but go on.
Mindhunter is. I enjoy Mindhunter, just for the record. There's hiccups, but I generally enjoy it.
Now, is that a documentary series, or is that a fictional program?
It is a dramatization of the actual development of the behavioral science unit at the FBI in the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
So it's not a documentary, but the majority, and again, I'm not sure on the specifics of exactly how true to life it is.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of the events they talk about are true events. In fact, a big portion of the second season centers around the Atlanta child murders.
Okay, I think what I was asking is it a dramatization?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. I'll check
and
that
again,
out.
It's ups and downs, but I enjoy it. I've enjoyed various seasons of Criminal Minds to varying degrees. So it's not about this. It's not just about the subject matter. It's how do I say this?
Are you going to give Prodigal Son a chance?
I don't know what that is.
Prodigal Son is a new show debuting on Fox in the fall TV season, where the father is some sort of criminal murderer, serial killer, I guess, and he's currently in prison, and the son keeps coming to him for advice on how to crack cases.
Who's involved?
You finish your sentence, and I will look it up for you.
Okay. Part of the reason I miss this show so much, I think, is every now and then you find a show that you feel like, oh, this was kind of made for me. Not deliberately made for me, but like this is, this is something that is, however it arrived at existence, it is made very much kind of for me and my enjoyment. And that's what I got out of this show. Again, still had some ups and downs. I'm happy calling a spade when it comes to what, works and doesn't. But this was a show that very much seemed like was designed around a lot of what I enjoy about television and artistic representation and so on and so forth.
All right. So it starts this September. It'll be on Fox, September 23rd to be exact. The series centers on a young profiler whose father is an infamous serial killer known as the Surgeon. The profiler is played by Tom Payne, and Michael Sheen, recently of Good Omens fame, where he plays the angel, plays the dad.
That does not sound all that interesting, actually. I have no faith in Fox.
This also stars Bellamy Young, Lou Diamond Phillips, Helston Sage, Aurora Perrineau, Frank Hartz, and Keiko Agena. The production company, the producers of note are one of the producers of note are Greg Berlanti.
Okay, no, I'm out.
And it is a Berlanti Productions and Warner Brothers Television production. That's that Fox bought.
Okay, yeah, not. After the first season, when I can find the whole thing, I might give it a try, but I'm not going to invest a tremendous amount of my time into that.
I think you should, just so we can talk about it.
If I do see this and I hate it, I'm going to stop very early, and I'm not going to want to talk about it.
Okay. I think it would be fun, just in the wake of what's happening here with Hannibal, just see and so Hannibal is gone, but what you got is prodigal son, and here's everything that's wrong with it. But
everything.
I'm gonna give it a shot. I like at least some of the cast involved with this, and certainly after dealing with what we've talked about. I only
know two of them.
You know who Lou Diamond Phillips is?
Yeah, he's one of the two.
You know who Michael Sheen is?
Not really. I am aware of Good Omens. Haven't seen it. Have no interest.
I'm assuming you know who Tom Paine is?
You are incorrect.
He is known for appearing on AMC's The Walking Dead as Paul Jesus Revilla.
No, Jesus.
Oh, okay. Jesus.
Yeah, because he looks like Jesus.
Oh, hey, look.
I
don't watch the show, so.
I didn't watch that season either. I checked out of I have not watched The Walking Dead in several years. There was a point when I checked out. I forget exactly where it was, but I never watched him in that role.
Okay. On television, he hasn't done a whole lot of anything else besides The Walking Dead.
I am aware because I don't know who he is.
Though he was on Luck.
Never saw it.
It's a slow show, and unless you're really into horse racing, he
Nope.
He makes an appearance in The People versus George Lucas. He was on 2 episodes of Wuthering Heights.
Look, okay. I read that. I did not need to see any other variation thereof.
His films are almost nil here.
So who else on that show were you saying I should know?
Oh, Martin Sheen. Michael Sheen. Martin Sheen, Jesus.
No. Because I already said no. Okay, so I've dismissed the 2 leads as people I don't know and have never seen. Who else?
Bellamy Young's been in stuff.
I do not know who that is.
Bellamy Young has... She was in A Wrinkle in Time.
Who was she in that abomination?
Camazot's woman.
Okay.
Let's move out of her filmography. She's done a lot of television. She was in an episode of Whiskey Cavalier. She was on an episode of Lip Sync Battle.
I do not engage in that stupidity.
She won a Critics' Choice Award, I believe, for Scandal.
I haven't watched Scandal. I can't take that much Kerry Washington being fierce. And that's substituting actual character.
She was on an episode of Franklin and Bash. She was on several episodes of Criminal Minds.
Who was she in that? In what seasons?
Beth Clemens between 2011 and 2013. She had a recurring role.
Okay, I think I know who that was.
Hey, she was in 9 episodes of Dirty Sexy Money.
I do not know what that is.
All right, let's move on. Let's see. Anybody else you might know here?
Point being, there's no one on that cast that's drawing my interest.
You know Halston Sage.
No, I do not.
She was Dazzler in Dark Phoenix.
Dazzler was in Dark Phoenix?
Yeah, she's dancing by the fire.
I'll take your word for it. I've blocked so much of that movie from my memory.
All right. She was fucking Lara Katan in The Orville.
I don't watch The Orville.
Oh, that's where you're missing out. That's right. You hate Seth MacFarlane.
I really do.
I knew she looked familiar. Well, now I'm definitely watching this. I liked her on that show.
Okay. Look, I look forward to you watching the first 3 episodes and telling me...
This is hot garbage.
Yes.
This next gal, Aurora Perrineau, she was in When They See Us.
Well, she's Harold Perrineau's daughter, right?
Sure.
I don't know. It's just not a common enough last name.
Yes, she is. She was Shanna. For God's sake, she was Shanna Helmsford and Gem in the Holograms.
I'd be more interested if it was Harold Perrineau.
Are we done?
Let me think real fast. Now that we're setting the gimmickry aside. I really do. There's a couple of major things that this show got pulled off the air before I was able to enjoy as a viewer. One of them was the death of Freddie Lounds, because boy, I was looking forward to that. I hate that character so much, and I mean that as a compliment. Like, that is a despicable character. It's supposed to be despicable. When they do that bit with, I was so waiting for Dollarhide to abduct her and disfigure and then murder her. But instead, they went with Chilton. And severe credit to Raul Esparza for doing as much as he did with that role. Because I said this after the first season, I don't know who could have done it after Anthony Held did such a tremendous job, but he did. So I didn't get to see Freddie Lounds die. I didn't get to see Hannibal kill Alana Bloom. And, speaking of characters that overstay their welcome, boy, does she just... I mean, they find, to the writer's credit, they find stuff for her to do. I mean, the first time she and Margot were on screen, it's like, oh, that's where you're going to go with this. Okay. Because in fairness, they completely changed the character of Margot from the novel in some very important ways. Like, in the novel, she's very butch. Like, she's very muscular. She's very much a, pardon the phrase, a butch lesbian. Whereas in this one, not so much.
By the way, if there's one thing that truly horrified me in this entire series, it was a gestating baby inside of a pig. Yikes.
Yeah, that'd do it.
I mean, like, there are things that gross me out. There are things that gross me out in children's movies. I talked about this with whoever, with Jesse, the Angry Birds rubbing snot on themselves. I had to turn my head because it was too much for me. This wasn't gross to look at. I was legitimately, like, horrified, not frightened, like abjectly made sick by the look of it.
I understand the difference, and if I might say this, and I mean this not in the... I don't mean this in the oh no kind of way. I mean, it offended you. Not in the sense that, again, not in the sense that, oh, I'm going to go on Twitter and rant, but this is so alien that it actually is offensive to my reality.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't rise to the level of child molestation or rape, but it's up there. It's in my top 5.
Yeah, and again, this is network television. There's only so much they can get away with.
Yeah. And it's not like you see the fucking child being birthed by the pig or anything. The implication...
You do see the C-section.
Mm-hmm. The implication is enough to be sickening.
Yes. And again, when I say this is offensive, this isn't in the, oh, you said a word that I don't like. The way it gets, banned, the way the word offensive gets bandied about recently. This is something that is, again, so alien, it offends you on a core level.
Yeah.
Like, again, you're not trying to lobby a petty insult. Like, this is anathema to reality, and how dare you.
Right.
Yeah, that's up there. Again, there's a lot of very effective, horrifying stuff. I kind of dig the guy they got to play Cordell in this. He's a suitably creepy.
Yeah, he gets a lot of character actor bits. He's really good.
So again, there's all of that. I don't think I have anything else. Again, I deeply enjoyed this show. I was glad of the opportunity to go back through it again. And again, when I say warts and all, it's not a perfect show, but the experience of rewatching this on occasion, I think, is good because there's a lot of stuff that is deliberately subtle or subtext that you only pick up after a second or third kind of viewing. And again, this time going through it gave me a much deeper appreciation for the acting that Lawrence Fishburne does. One last kind of minor thing that I forgot to touch on. Much as I do deeply enjoy their fight sequence in the beginning of Season 2, there's something profoundly satisfying about their rematch in Italy when Jack just beats the shit out of him.
Yes, when people learn not to hold back, it is amazing what you can accomplish. All right, we have to figure out something else for us to do. I owe you at least one. I owe you a One Punch Man.
That's never gonna look. I made my peace with that not happening. Don't worry about it.
Okay, well, we'll come up with something else. Because the ongoing thing with you is, you can't get Mark to do X, Y, Z. You most certainly can get Mark to do most certain things. You just, you have to package it the right way. There has to be, we got a podcast about it. It has to go with something. See, it's all about the pitch, not about the product with me. So
that surprises no one.
All right, Dick, go do your plugs.
Look, tell me I'm wrong and I'll apologize.
No.
I think the next one we should try to go through is Mindhunter, because the first 2 seasons are up, and it's similar material, and don't get me wrong, there's ups and downs to that show. There's some pretty serious problems in a few places. But it's done, at least a few episodes are directed, and I think it's produced by David Fincher, so it's also very, for the material covered, there's almost no on-screen violence.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, discussion, there's some photographs, but there's almost no depiction of the acts of people killing each other. There's one very early in the first episode, but other than that, not so much. So I think we should maybe give that one a try. But you might also, partway through the first season, I can actually kind of imagine exactly the point. You might kind of throw up your hands and go, enough of this.
Yeah, well, I was interested in Mind Killer even before you pitched it, so we'll figure out a timing thing for that when I can sit down and watch it and when we want to talk about it. You know the schedule; it moves like a river. So, all right. Plugs.
All right. As for my plugs, you can find me this Saturday pulling double duty again. Written coverage for UFC 242 in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. This will start Saturday morning. I think the prelims start at noon Eastern. And then for the main card, main card starts at 2.
Yep.
Prelims are going to be earlier than noon then.
Yeah. That doesn't sound right to me.
Probably 10 Eastern then.
I'm guessing
I had to guess.
The Middle East is got to be on like Greenwich Mean Time, because I would.
Do you not understand what Greenwich Mean Time is?
It's the same time in Abu Dhabi as it is in London. That's all I was trying to say.
It is not.
Okay. Well, that's weird then. Well,
have you not looked at a... Do I have to bring up a map?
Yeah, it's right next to Switzerland. Look, I'm making that assumption just because of television start times. I mean, I could be off here.
Look, this event, because of the money involved in that part of the world and the people they're catering to, they are going prime time in... they're going prime time locally,
okay.
Rather than
just so I can defend the fact that I'm not a total idiot here. So, for example, there's a fight a week from Saturday that's taking place in London that goes from 2 to 5, which would be prime time in that area. So I assume that's where the assumption was being made, despite the geographical distance. And I'm like, well, if the math works out on that, fine. But geographically, wow, is that weird?
No, okay, hang on. 2 to 5 East Coast time is not prime time in London.
What time is it in London?
I don't know exactly. I forget the specific time differences.
Because I was thinking all these British boxing shows that we do on here start around the same time, usually 2 o'clock.
Okay, it might be closer, but I'd have to double. I can't remember. I can't remember if the difference is 4 or 5 hours.
You do your thing, and I'll look it up.
So anyway, you can find us. Mark and I will be providing live commentary for the main card. I'm looking forward to that event. Should be a good one. Assuming nothing catastrophic happens between now and fight time, which is not a given at all. Sundays, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. This week, it was me solo as I did a review of UFC on ESPN Plus 15, which Mark and I also did alternate main card coverage for. Boy, was that that card existed. What else do you want me to say? Impactful main event, very short, but you can find my full report of that over at the MMA Zone of 411 Mania, or you can listen to Mark and I do live coverage and react in real time to the fights, such as they were. And next week I'll be back here with Alexis Hana and Jason Teasley, and Mark will find some way to weasel out of talking about It Chapter 2.
I won't. I will be there. Look, I have to have an ass biopsy this Friday. I'm making them wait to biopsy my ass for the 98th time, so that I can so I can see It. I'm seeing It at 11:15. I want you to text me via Messenger at 11:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I'm not awake then.
I want you to get up.
I'm not going to do it.
Okay, and I want you to say, "Where are you?" And I am going to take a picture of the fucking theater for you.
Tell you what, just post it on Facebook with your post a picture of you and your daughter going to see the movie on Facebook.
I'm not taking my daughter to go see It.
You absolutely should.
She can't take the trailer.
That's why you should do it.
No. The Matrix was good enough. She had a hard enough time. She had a hard enough time getting through that.
Okay, fine. Take your son then.
Are you done yet? Are you done?
Your wife?
So tonight,
your ex-wife?
TV.
There we go.
By the way,
just trying to get some different reaction out of you.
So Tuesday Eastern Standard Time is 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So there you go.
Okay, so yeah, they're closer to prime time Eastern, or prime time in London then.
Yes.
But wait, the week after that's also like an ESPN Plus card, isn't it?
The week after what?
Hang on.
You talking about the 14th? Yeah, the 14th is Cerrone versus Gaethje, which is the same night as Tyson Fury and Otto Wallen.
Hold on, no, they're not in London for that. They're in frickin' Vancouver.
Who are we talking about?
Who are you talking about?
I was talking about Sonny Edwards versus Hugo Guarneris, which is in London at 2:00.
Okay, no one cares.
Low
level boxing. No one cares.
I was just pointing out the fact that where I was getting the Abu Dhabi time from.
Okay, fair enough. No, Abu Dhabi is not on the same time as London. There's at least 2 time zones difference.
Okay.
But Abu Dhabi also, I imagine, has other restrictions on public events. I could be mistaken.
I want to look this up. 6 p.m. in London is what time in Abu Dhabi? I hope everyone's really interested in this. 6 p.m. in...
There's someone out there screaming the appropriate answers, you dumbasses.
What time in Abu Dhabi? I heard this podcast. For a while they talked about Hannibal, and then for another hour they talked about time zones. 9 p.m.
So 3 hours difference.
Yeah. So when this goes... So at 2:00, the main card for Khabib versus Poirier will be 2:00 in America, on the East Coast in America. 2:00 Eastern Standard Time, 6:00 in London, and 9:00 in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah,
which makes sense.
They're running late on that.
Okay.
Yeah, again, that's not going to end until 11 or so local time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's all that. Now you all know, and aren't you just and knowing's half the battle, as they say.
Indeed.
So you can find that's where I'm going to be again. Mark, I'm looking forward to how he gets out of viewing it. Chapter. You haven't even seen Chapter 1 yet, have you?
No, I got to sit down and watch that.
Because we were supposed to talk about it. I twisted your arm to get it on the schedule, and then you went, hurricane, my wife, got to be at the jail overnight.
I was sequestered. You can't blame that on me.
I can. It's irrational, but I can do it.
This hurricane managed to utterly miss the Tampa Bay area, though it threatened. It poked, as you say.
It
harassed. It harassed. That's the word you use.
It's going to drizzle on you a little bit. That's about
it's drizzling now. That's not the point.
Yeah, that's all you're going to get.
You know.
It's going to stand on the other side. It's going to stand like 10 miles offshore and just pee on you. That's about it.
We're at an hour and a half, and we literally stopped talking about Hannibal, I feel like 45 minutes ago.
Anyway, so in theory, that's what'll happen next Tuesday. I look forward to Mark getting out of it. Depending on where you find it, Chapter 1, I wouldn't hate doing a watch along with you on that, just for kind of giggles.
Let's talk about maybe Friday. See, that's the problem with doing it Friday is that's going to be first thing in the middle of it's going to be in the middle of the morning, like very early morning for you, because I was planning on getting up and watching it before I have to leave. So we're talking like 8 o'clock in the morning here, unless it's a 3-hour movie.
It's a 2-hour movie, I think. Let me look up the runtime for you.
The other option would be to do it Thursday night after I get done podcasting with Jesse. But then you're going to make me watch a horror movie before I go to bed.
How do you think that's out of character for me? Okay, the runtime is 135 minutes, so shade over 2 hours.
Okay. Let's pencil it in for Thursday night. But
okay.
But like 10, 11-ish my time.
10, well, that's 8 to 9 here. Yeah, okay.
All right, so watch along.
Hang on, kind of depending on where what are you doing? You going to buy it on Amazon or something?
I'm definitely renting it, yes. I've looked multiple times. It's on Cinemax right now, but I don't subscribe to Cinemax.
Fair enough. I might wind up renting it then and going along with that.
Okay.
Or you could rent it and
So anyway, tonight we have our wrestling review. We've got New Japan, Royal Quest, NXT UK Takeover Cardiff, and AEW All Out. I'll have Chris Bailey and Pat on the show.
But you have all the wrestling.
Yeah. All the wrestling from this past weekend we'll be reviewing. Tomorrow night, Jesse will be dropping an extra source material for you. It's X-Men Legacy Volume 2, Invasive Exotics, which features Legion. The reason we're doing that is because the following night, along apparently with this watch-along we're doing, Jesse and I will be reviewing the final season of Legion on FX, Legion Season 3. Nothing going on Friday, thank God. But as you heard, Robert and I will be doing coverage for Khabib versus Poirier on Saturday from 2 to 5. We've got Onslaught Volume 2 next week. As Robert said before, the It Chapter 2 review, Killswitch Engage, Atonement, and She-Ra Season 3. So that'll be fun. The following week after that, we've got Onslaught Volume 3, The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance with myself and Robert, Tarja in the Raw on the Metal Hammer of Doom, and then Sean and I will be doing an on-trial for the 1980s Dark Crystal movie. That's enough plugs for now. I want to thank Robert for going on this ride with me, even though he insisted he drive. That's fine. I like to take a nap in the back seat. It's okay. No, but Hannibal was a fun series to go over. We've now done this. This is the third year in a row. I usually do something like this around Halloween time. Next year, I'm making somebody watch the entire series of Lucifer with me, so we can talk about that.
I feel to be clear. I think I watched a few episodes of Lucifer, but I did not care for it.
Well, apparently it was based on a comic, so I immediately threw it on the schedule and said, we're dedicating an entire week to this. It ain't Charlie's Angels.
That is a knee-jerk reaction you really have to get over.
It has not worked out well for me this year. Hey, The Kitchen's a comic. People will want to talk about that. Nope. That ended up being a really good show, though. Pat screaming that the Irish Mafia doesn't work that way.
I mean, he is correct.
He ain't wrong. All right, folks. We have yammered.
Moreover, if I may, no one that's just a terrible. It was a terrible comic book, and it made an even worse movie.
It certainly did, Ollie. All right. Thank you for joining us here on TV Party tonight. I'll take you out with an ad for an app that I love called Podcoin, and then after that, be well, be safe, and behave. Hey, everybody. I really do hope you love the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast? I know it sounds insane, but it's true. We just discovered this free new app called Podcoin, and it literally pays you to listen to podcasts. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts, and you earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you turn that Podcoin in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks, or if you're a good person, you could even donate that Podcoin to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. Here's what you do. Download the app right now on iPhone or Android, and I have a special code for you. Simply use our code MARKWED5. That's capital MARKWED 5. Capital MARKWED 5. MARKWED5. And you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. And if you listen to enough of us on there, you can get a cappuccino at Starbucks or an Amazon gift card on us. So go ahead and go listen to this podcast or virtually any podcast on Podcoin and sign up with code MARKWED5. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts.